Good morning and welcome members and guests to the Children and Family Subcommittee. We would like to call the roll, please. Lance, would you call the roll?
Representative Curcio? Here. Representative Faison? Representative Johnson? Here. Representative Potts? Here. Representative Rudder? Here. Chairman Littleton?
Here.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Welcome, members and committee. Do we have any personal orders for the morning before we begin? If not, let's begin by calling up our first bill, which is number 1, House Bill 190 by Chairman Carter. Do I hear a motion and a second? You have a motion and a second. You are recognized, Chairman Carter.
Members of the committee, this bill was discovered in Hamilton County during the past year that a lady qualified as an administratrix of an estate when in fact she had been convicted in another state of embezzling $500,000 from the very gentleman she was appointed to. The remaining heirs felt some hostility toward that and brought a suit to remove her. It was then discovered that that was not a grounds to be removed, that while the criminal law says if you're a convicted felon you cannot serve as an administrator, the estate law did not maintain that same status. So this bill requires the administrator or an executor to state under oath that they do qualify and that they have not been convicted of a felony. They're not in violation of the statute that sets it out. So it applies both to civil and criminal if this bill is enacted. And it was brought to me by the chancellor that was involved in the matter. With that, I'll answer any questions.
Are there any questions for Chairman Carter? Hearing none, or is there any objection for calling for the question? Oh, I'm sorry, there's an amendment on there.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
I'm on the amendment.
It's 4359.
4359, I'm sorry.
Would you like to?
The amendment restates the bill and is the description I just gave you. I'm sorry, I just missed it.
Are there any questions on the amendment? All those in favor of adopting Amendment 4359, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say no. So the amendment is adopted.
Right.
Are there any other questions for Chairman Carter? If not, all those in favor of House Bill 190, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say no. The ayes have it. Moves out to judiciary.
Thank you. Chairman and members.
Yes. And House Bill 785 by Representative Hicks is off notice. And number 3, House Bill 994 by Representative Beck is off notice. Next, we have House Bill 004 by Representative Staples. Do I hear a motion and a second? Second. Representative Staples, you are recognized.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, Mr. Chairman, and committee members. I'm going to ask, with your permission, to roll this bill 2 weeks. I just want an opportunity, if I may, to explain the bill.
Representative Staples, I think it would be better if you just took it off notice and then put it back on notice when you get ready to.
With your permission.
I think it would be better for you.
Yes, because we're going to meet with DCS at 11, so
Okay.
that would work great. So
Perfect.
I appreciate that. I wanted your permission. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you, committee members.
So, pardon? Okay. So House Bill 004 by Representative Staples is off notice. I was getting to that. And next is House Bill 867 by Representative Berry, and it is also off notice. And the next bill is mine, and I'm going to pass the gavel down to Chairman Curcio.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. You are recognized on House Bill 122.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We hear a motion and a second. We have a properly motion, properly seconded. Representative or Chairman Littleton, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman Curcio. We've been working on this bill, and it just needs a lot of work. It means a lot to me, this bill does, and I would like to put that in a summer study and actually study this to see what we can do.
Okay, that's a proper motion for summer study. Do we have a second? Okay, properly motioned and second. All those in favor of sending House Bill 122 to summer study, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes have it. Summer study. I will pass them back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And without objection, we are going to go out of session and hear from Ms. Connie Reguli. Would you please come forward and state your name and position for the record, please? We are out of session. Yes, sir. Could you turn your microphone on, please?
Is that on now?
Thank you.
you. I'm Connie Reguli. Members of the Tennessee General Assembly and this committee, thank you. My name is Connie Reguli. I am an attorney who has worked for 25 years in the Tennessee courts. I have served as a prosecutor in Metro Nashville in domestic violence and child abuse and spent a great deal of my career in the trial courts of Tennessee litigating the lives of children. I am here because the child welfare system is in crisis. 500,000 kids in the United States and 7,000 kids in Tennessee are residing away from their families in the homes of strangers we call foster care. The statistics show that 85% of these children have been removed from their homes under the vague term of neglect. One half of those cases involve drug use, and the other half are homes that fall under a nebulous category of neglect, otherwise unspecified. Before I go further, I want to confirm that I know children in this state suffer from physical and sexual abuse, and I know that there are children born where the parents are unable to provide stability and safety for the children. My very first jury trial as a new lawyer was the murder of a 2-year-old child who had been brutally burned and suffered head trauma. I know that children need protection. About 10 years ago, I noticed a dramatic shift in the cases handled by DCS. Where for years we had struggled to get DCS to pay attention to abuse against children, the pendulum began to swing in the opposite direction. DCS began an over-vigilant crusade to remove children from their homes, place them in foster care, and adopt the children into the homes of strangers. It was not clear to me why this dramatic shift occurred until I studied the impact of federal funding and the adoption bonus money on the functioning of the state welfare agency. It is very important as legislators that you understand this. DCS functions with about half of its budget coming from federal funds. These funds are mainly derived from Medicaid, Title IV-E, Title IV-B, and the Social Service Block Grant. Although the Medicaid funds are the largest source of funds, I want to focus on Title IV-E and B. Title IV-E is the foster care money provided to the states on a dollar-to-dollar match, a use-it-or-lose-it scheme, and never subject to sequester. This is the money that goes to the placement and management of children in foster care. Title IV-B is the money that can be used to rehabilitate a family prior to removal. The problem lies in the fact that the IV-E funds are 10 times the funds allocated to IV-B. On a national level, the IV-E funds are about $9 billion, and the IV-B funds are about $900 million. Therefore, this tips the scale in an agency that is titled Children's Services to focus on the removal of children to sustain the influx of federal funds upon which they have come to rely. In addition, and this is very important, the Title IV-E funding includes a bonus check to DCS for every child that is adopted into the home of strangers. Yes, a bonus check. Under the Adoption and Safe Families Act of 1997, the federal government authorized the issuance of bonus funds to the states to attain permanency for a child, but only when permanency was forced adoption. This is now $10,000 per child. This Cash for Kids scheme can no longer be tolerated and should immediately be prohibited by this body. In addition to the lopsided funding scheme, the privatization of foster care and the services provided to rehabilitate families has turned the business of churning kids through the foster care system into a maniacal for-profit industry that feasts off the continuous disruption of families. You call these stakeholders. Here are a few of DCS stakeholders. In the 2017-18 fiscal year, Camelot made $29 million, Keys Group $22 million, Omni $64 million, Vanderbilt $5 million, and many more. Along with the burgeoning industry of foster care, family services, and forced adoption, we have the exorbitant cost of the judicial system that serves as the factory that destroys family ties and allows DCS to socially engineer a new life for a child. The costs include judges, court clerks, court officer, state-paid attorneys, and DCS workers that are paid not to serve children and families, but to sit in court. We have created a monster. DCS was created in 1995, and simultaneously, the General Assembly created an oversight committee, which was never formed, and the act was repealed in 2011. The agency has had no oversight, even though there are several attempts. The Second Look Committee, the Standards Committee, the Citizens Review Committee, the Commission on Children and Youth. No one listens to the families and children affected by the system. The Brian A. class action suit was filed in May 2000, and a consent decree set standards for the management of children in foster care. In July 2017, the order was terminated and the case dismissed. Even there was no interaction with families and children. The problems are systemic, and instead of putting a patch on the problem with another single bill, this body must look at the operation of this system and cut out the cancer that prevents the state from providing competent and effective services. First, we must prohibit conflicts of interest. The agency itself operates with an inherent conflict of interest. You cannot have an agency which was formed to serve families and simultaneously allow them to prosecute parents. The contractors operate with significant conflicts as foster care companies making money on the child's daily servitude in foster care while posing as offering services for reunification. The agency must be split. The prosecution of parents must be separate and distinct from the agency that provides services to families. Second, there must be competent management of personnel. Incompetent personnel that fails to follow the law and policy must be eliminated. Third, we must have competent parent representation. Currently, indigent parents counsel are paid out of the Indigent Counsel Fund of the AOC. These funds are restricted where a parent seeks counsel seeks a vigorous defense. They are overspent and overrun by the resources of DCS and the Office of the Attorney General. In a criminal prosecution, the DA and the public defenders operate on separate planes and are in constant opposition. Parents are entitled to a vigorous defense at all stages: administrative, investigations, litigation, appeals, and civil rights violations. Fourth, we must have parent advocacy. Parents are overpowered, exhausted, and emotionally drained. CFTM meetings are full of aggressive DCS workers and contract providers making demands on the parents. Parents Council cannot and should not be expected to provide hands-on emotional support through that process. We must have parent advocacy like the court-appointed volunteers of CASA. Fifth, we must have feedback and reporting. There is no functional system for reporting policy violations and civil rights violations of the DCS workers. Sixth, grounds for termination of parental rights must be changed. Justice Koch wrote an opinion contrasting the constitutional standard of parental unfitness versus the statutory grounds for termination of parental rights. Currently, a parent can lose their parental rights for failing to pay child support to the state while their child is in custody and they're fighting to get their child home. The war on poverty should not cut so deep as to deem failure to pay child support as a measure of unfitness. Mental health issues are also used to terminate parental rights without a showing of harm. In Tennessee, a mother's rights were terminated to her child because she could not have her child in her group home. Therefore, her familial bond was severed forever. A mother who's exposes an unborn to drugs is deemed to have severely abused her child, even if she's remedied the problem before birth and the child is born healthy. This finding of severe abuse marks her for life as an unfit parent, and for decades after that birth, the state can take all of her children based on that prior ruling. Although many of the legal grounds for termination of parental rights sound like situations which could pose a serious risk to a child, these grounds are often perverted and driven by the adoption bonuses and the Title IV money. Seventh, DCS must follow the law. Sadly, they often just don't follow the law. Cases are damaged, rights are lost, and children suffer while parents work their way through the litigation process that take 2 or 3 years at best, all while the family is broken apart and the child's bond with the parent is broken. In 2018, Congress passed the Families First Preservation and Services Act that redirected Title IV funds to services provided to families for 12 months prior to removal. However, to get it past the lobbying, special interests, and stakeholders in D.C., the bill had to become optional for the states. In December 2018, a policy decision out of Washington's Children's Bureau permits Title IV funding to be redirected to representation of parents. These will not be implemented unless you require DCS to do so and report on the results. Let me tell you this. There is no road that needs to be built, no new tax that needs to be imposed, no new gun law that needs to be passed that is more important than our families and children. The social experiment, which commenced with the Mondale Act, CAPTA, in 1974, has failed, and only with direct attention, diligent efforts, and a caring government can we correct the devastating path we are on. Thank you. Any questions?
Yes, I do have a few. I'd like to know where the statistics come from about the 85% of the children that have been removed from their homes, please.
Those, there are...
You are recognized.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry. There are lots of statistics available through the Health and Human Services website, the Children's Bureau, Administration of Children and Families, and there's all kinds of documents, and that's where I pull my statistics from. Yes, ma'am.
And the second thing is the adoption. You called it a bonus check, but that comes from the federal government. Is that correct?
That is correct.
It's authorized through there. How many children do you think have actually, let's just say in 2018, were actually adopted out from DCS foster care homes?
Thank you for asking. And some of the state numbers are difficult to obtain. I research for statistics all the time. And I know Mr. Diamond is here, and he might be able to give you a more direct answer on that. I have a printout of the federal report of the adoption bonus money that has been paid out. That is from the government that I would be happy to provide for any of you. I know those, and I study the stats all over the country. They range anywhere from 600 to 3,500 kids. Now, I will tell you, there's an odd kind of formula when ASFA was passed in 1997, and it was like, and then it was reinstated again, and there's like, they have to do a certain number of adoptions before they kind of reach a threshold where they start getting that bonus money, and that's a specific stat. It's difficult to get, but I can get that chart for you.
It would be great if you could send that to us. And I think my next question was the mothers that are addicted, and they do have the babies that are addicted. And I know that there are some that maybe after 7 months of the pregnancy, but there are down the line, do you not think there are some complications from the mother taking drugs while she was pregnant?
And thank you for asking that. And I have, this is a very interesting issue. I actually have a mother in East Tennessee that I followed that had a couple positive drug screens before her baby was born. I think the most recent was at about 6 months. She had her baby was clean, she was clean. DCS walked into the hospital at 2 days old and took the baby. By the time she got to court, she actually had a OBGYN come in and testify in her behalf, who said that the studies had shown that there was no specific harm that could be tied to that. So that's testimony that we could locate and provide as well if we need to.
I have a lot of friends that are teachers, and they do claim that, like, when they start school, that sometimes they have some behavioral problems, and they do think that it is because the mother was addicted and took drugs while the child was in the womb. So what do you think about that?
I think that we don't have good studies on that, unfortunately, because a lot of parents would probably say, well, it's vaccines or it's, whatever, toxins in the food. So I have been able to locate any valid studies that shows that direct link. Now, let me say, probably what needs to occur is somewhere there needs to be maybe some closer studies of the children in early intervention. I know DCS uses and Vanderbilt has what's called the Tennessee Early Intervention Program. And a lot of times, and I know we had a bill passed, I think it was 0 through 3. So to maybe perhaps follow those children more and follow up with their developmental process during the preschool years would be beneficial. But I don't think that what's before you today is enough validated medical studies to show that direct causal link.
Okay, and this will be my last question because I'm sure the committee has other questions, but the stakeholders, you were talking about what we spend on those. Do you not think that these stakeholders do a lot for our children that are in custody?
I think that unfortunately, our stakeholders, well, first of all, there's this conflict of interest. We have a conflict of interest when you have a stakeholder who's running a foster care company and then is running what they call a rehabilitation or reunification service, because you always have the balance of money is going to be a day-to-day per diem on that child that's in foster care. So there's always an internal conflict, and they run for profit. We cannot ignore that. I mean, OmniVisions, and, you know, I will say I was very upset in 2011 when Jim Henry was appointed as the Commissioner of Department of Children's Services, who was the CEO of Omni, who had a $53 million contract with the Department of Children's Services. Do I think that you know, I also studied, and this can be provided, the Standards Committee put out a report in April 2018 that they had discovered that several of these private stakeholders had people at the very top echelons operating these companies with fake degrees. There's not enough oversight of them. They need to be broken up. Whoever's going to provide foster care cannot be a company who's providing to keep family services, to keep family together. There's an inherent conflict. And there's no report back system. I have a couple of pretty bad cases about foster homes that children were placed on that I would be happy to share with anybody privately because I'm under a gag order. I can't say it. You know, I can't talk about these juvenile cases. I can't. They're confidential. So when I want to share with you very specific incidents and very specific information that I have to do that in confidence. And I would be happy to do that about homes where there's drugs and alcohol, foster homes where there's drugs and alcohol, and, you know, putting signs on the furniture and refrigerators saying if you didn't bring it, don't touch it. So I'll just tell you there's not good oversight of that.
Well, for sure, we're not living in a perfect world.
Absolutely.
But I think, I do have one more question. Do you not think these groups are successful? The stakeholders, the Camelot and the Keys, do you deem them successful?
I think they're financially extremely successful. I don't think, you know, and I didn't even get into, if you look at the stats of foster children and what happens to foster children when they become adults, it's pretty grim. I did not bring those stats with me, but it'll show that they have a higher incidence of being incarcerated, of having children out of wedlock, of, you know, not getting college degrees. Our foster care success rate is not good. Another problem that we have is generational foster care at this point. I have a young lady who's with me here today from Humphreys County, Tennessee, and she has a really horrible story about how all of her kids, and when she was a child, they were all removed and put in foster care, and then when she has children, DCS comes after her kids and puts them in foster care, and I've seen that repeatedly. We have this systemic churning of children and families and generations through the foster care system.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions for Ms. Reguli? Chairman Curcio, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Ms. Regula, are you a medical doctor?
I am not.
Okay, I wasn't sure based on your testimony. 'Cause did I hear that drug use doesn't have any impact on children?
No, I'm saying that I have not found good studies on that. I brought up the one case where I worked with a mom from a distance. I did not get to represent her, but a mom in East Tennessee is a good example. She had a couple positive drug screens, has baby, she's clean, the baby's clean. DCS takes her kids at 2 days old. By the time she gets to trial, she has her OBGYN come in and testify that there's no good studies to show that direct link. So I was referencing what the doctor had testified to, yes.
In that specific case?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
We've got a handout in front of us, but I don't think we have a copy of your testimony. I mean, we heard a lot of things like cash for kids, maniacal system, social engineering, no oversight. We're presiding over a cancer. These are pretty intense allegations against this committee and state government at large. So could we get a copy of these so that we could respond to them?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Chairman Rudder, you are recognized.
I don't know if I have a question more than a statement, but I do appreciate your testimony. It's been very eye-opening. I hope that it's not true, but I do understand that there's corruption, whether it's big dollars involved. I can see that. But from my personal point of view, it seems that if a child is removed from a home and put into foster care, there has to be something going on there, maybe no matter how small that child is removed. So I think drug abuse on any level is a bad thing for a pregnant mother or people that have children that do drugs in the home. I'm an advocate of one bite of the apple. If you abuse a child, I don't think that you have a right to be reunited with that child if it's severe abuse. I'm sure there's some abuse that we could call abuse that would be more minor, but I'm an advocate for the children, and I do understand, I hear the horrors of the foster system and the DHS system, but it's about usually trying to get a child to adopt a child that's in foster care that is so difficult. So I don't really have anything else to say other than I think that if you do drugs, that does harm the child. That is abuse, and children deserve no abuse on any level at any time.
Right. Thank you for that. And, you know, and I also agree that you cannot abuse drugs and raise children. Okay. I run a social media group of 11,000 people, and, you know, we try to reach out to families all across the country, and I frequently post, you use, you choose, you lose, because you cannot raise children and abuse drugs. However, people do rehabilitate, and also please also consider the children. The Constitution applies to the children. Children equally have a 14th Amendment right to family integrity. So if a child is born to a family, they have a constitutional right in this country to be part of that family. Where, in particular, one of the things that's very troubling to me is what I talked about with the severe abuse finding. Probably about 10 or 12 years ago, we had a case that went up to the Court of Appeals, and it was a case in which a child was born addicted to crack or something, and there were severe withdrawal symptoms from that child when they were born. Our Tennessee Court of Appeals made a judicial conclusion at that point that any in utero drug exposure was severe abuse as a legal conclusion. So what that now means is that legal and severe abuse is forever. So that means that any child that you have after that severe abuse finding will be taken away from you, even if it's 10 years later. And you have cleaned yourself up, even if you were severely abused at that point. But also, when you look at a mother, and you know, I could give a whole nother speech on addiction and the opiate crisis, and you know how devastating that has been to our families and what we need to do to help families related to that. But when you have somebody who's been exposed to an addiction and they're trying to clean up their lives and get their lives back together, and they're reaching out and they're getting help, that child also has a constitutional right to maintain that family integrity.
Are there any other questions? I would like to say that we are living in an addictive crisis right now, and when a mother does drugs or drinks when she is pregnant, she knows that could damage the child. But I have called on other parents when I see one that has been born and then they're pregnant again. I have asked DCS if they're allowed to go and check on that child, and they are not. So that's a conflicting story there that I'm getting. So I need to check into that. But I do think if a mother delivers a pregnant child, an addicted child, then if she's pregnant again, I do think we should check on that child immediately.
Right.
That's my belief.
Well,
and that parent or that mother that has an addicted baby. So we have a big problem there. So that's what we're trying to fix. And the addiction crisis is a major crisis, and that's where we're focusing this year in our legislation. So it's a problem, and parents are addicted, and their children are around the drugs, and it's just, I don't know how we fix it, but that's what we're here. Mm-hmm. That's what we're trying to do.
Right, and that is correct.
But the child didn't ask for drugs. The parents are the ones that are doing it. So I feel like we are here for the child.
Yes, and let me give you another example. I actually had a court. I had a mother pregnant out of wedlock, very young people, very young kids, but mom had used some drugs before the child was born. She got pregnant in Michigan. She came back to Tennessee. Dad was still in Michigan, young guy, and she had her baby. Her baby seemed to be fine, but they actually alleged that father was abusive to his child because he didn't do anything when the mother used drugs in utero, which there's absolutely no legal thing that you can do. So there's just a lot of odd, very weird things in the law, tons of things that I could have a talk to you for 3 hours about. But I do agree that drug abuse is a problem, but I also know that families do rehabilitate.
And I agree, some do. Are there any other, oh, Chairman Faison, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I wanted to just speak with you and the committee just for a minute. I'm one of the families who actually is fostered a child out of DCS, and we end up adopting our child. And in part, I want to agree with you. At times, it's more detrimental to the child. If our whole goal as a state is to what's best for the child, there are times that it's more detrimental to a child to take a child out of a situation and put them in a foster home. I also own a pest control business, and I've done work for DCS, and I've been in some foster homes that are worse than the homes that we took them out of. Now, I'll also say this for DCS. This isn't systemic. I would say these are isolated cases. But if we're not careful, committee, we can sit on our high horse and pass judgment at a mama who's done something. But if we're completely honest with each other, the number one killer for children is obesity. And we never think of it as being a child abuse thing when a parent has horrible eating habits and allows their child to become grossly obese. But that's extremely dangerous too. There comes a point that we need to be, as a state, needs to come in for guidance, but also realize there's a lot of things that a parent can do that's detrimental for a child. We somehow as society would just say because of drugs, this is so horrible, but then you've got alcohol that's a problem, you've got obesity that's a problem, you've got discipline's a problem. This is one of those things that it's a delicate situation that all of them have very negative side effects to children. So it's incumbent on DCS to make sure that they're doing what's the best answer for the child. And I'll tell you, sometimes it's not a right answer. You can justify why it's wrong no matter what DCS does. So it's incumbent on the state to make sure that we find what the best answer is, not always the right answer, if you will.
Thank you, Chairman Faison. Are there any other questions? If not, thank you very much for coming today.
Thank you.
And we are going back into session.
Thank you.
Are there any announcements? If not, do I hear a motion to adjourn? So moved. We are adjourned.